Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Finholm recording a helpful video for a reteach of Concept 7, comparing negative fractions. So this video is to help you reteach and relearn common made mistakes on our Concept number 7 assessment before you take the retake opportunity. So let's look at a couple of examples here. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we recognize when we're looking at some specific examples. We want to make sure that when we're looking at finding a decimal value, first we need to recognize that this is not broken into tenths. So we can't use a decimal value here. First, we need to think about it as fractions. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks from -2 to -3, just like we talked about in class. That -3 counts as the fourth tick mark. And so I've got -2, that's my whole number. And then I'm going to have -1/4, 1 out of 4 of those tick marks. So -2 1/4, we then need to write as a decimal. If I have 1/4 of a dollar, I have a quarter, and a quarter is 25 cents. We could also take 1 divided by 4 on our calculator to get that 0.25 as our decimal point. All right, let's clear that and let's look at another spot. Just like always, I'll recommend and encourage that when you are going through these retake videos and opportunities, make sure that you're pausing and making notes so that you can use them on your retake. Make sure that you're asking yourself, does this make sense? What did I do? How did I get there? Okay, pause anytime you need. All right. In example 2, in question 2 from our Concept 7 assessment, from our Concept 7 assessment, now it asks us to graph 2 different points. So again, we'll notice that our points now, our fraction is broken up differently. Between -2 and -3, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, which means I'm looking at fifths. So -12/5, that should help me because my denominator is already in fifths. But I want to turn this into a mixed number. 2 times 5 is 10. So I can pull out 2 wholes, and then 12 minus 10 is 2 left over. If you need to go back and double check, you can review Round the Horn from 6th grade. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. Okay. So we know that one of my points needs to be -2 2/5. The second point, 2.8, is the same as 2 8/10. Reviewing how to read decimals as a fraction comes from our 5th grade standards. 2 8/10 can be simplified into 2 4/5. Okay. And now we have 2 fractions that we can find on our graph. So -2 2/5 would be -2 1/5, 2/5. So this would be an option. And -2 4/5, -2 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. And so sure enough, we find that answer A is the correct answer. If we look at some of the other answers, in letter B, one of our decimals was between 1 and 2, so that would be -1 3/5. That doesn't work. And here we have -1 1/5, or -1 3/5. If you're still feeling uncomfortable comparing and finding fractions on the negative side of a number line, I would encourage you to pause this video and practice writing out the fractions for each of the dots you see. Even though that's not what the question asks, it's a good opportunity for you to practice and review a skill that we need to know from this concept. All right, next up. Whoops, switch pens back. Okay. So to choose a symbol to compare the numbers, 7/10, in order to think about that, we could think of 7/10 as 0.7, or we could think of 0.07 as 7/100ths. Well, we know that hundredths is going to be smaller. And so 7/10ths or 0.7 is greater than 7/100ths or 0.07. This one, I think a lot of folks just got mixed up because there were so many numbers to look at. So the first thing we want to look at is making sure that we recognize that if we're putting things in order from least to greatest, smallest to biggest, the positives better all be to the right-hand side of the list and the negatives better be to the left side. So there are some of these that we can eliminate right away. +2, -4. Well, +2 is definitely going to be bigger than -4. Okay, now letter B might be a possibility because it has the positives to the right in the list, but we have to really think about what this looks like. -1/3 and -1/6. If we think about that on a number line, okay, let's think about where that falls just to double check. So we know that 1 is going to be over here to the right, and we know that 1/2 is also to the right. -1/3 is the same as 2/6. Okay? So -1/3 is the same as 2/6, which means I have 1/6, and then I have -2/6. And so sure enough, this one is in correct order from left to right on the number line. So letter B works. Okay. In letter C, we know that the negative falls where it should. And we know 0.2 would make sense to come next. But now when we think about 3/10ths, 3/10ths is 0.3. And 1/4 we know from the previous example is 0.25. Well, 0.25 should come before 0.3. So that one they accidentally mixed up their positive values. Okay, so this is an idea of how to go through and process. Again, I would strongly encourage you to pause the video and try letters D and E before you move forward and get to your retake, pausing and looking at those orders and double checking them on a number line to make sure. We can see in letters D and E that they have the positives in the right place. But then we need to go back and double check our negatives, and we want them to be in order from left to right on our number line. I will tell you that one of these answers, either D or E, is correct, and one of them is incorrect. So that can help you double check and make sure that you are able to solve and put numbers in order on a number line before you do this retake. All right, looking at question 5, Miss Sampson recorded the percentage change in her students' quarter grades. So math teachers look at this a lot, right? I look at your original score and then I look at how our retake goes, and that helps tell me, should we do more review and reteaching, or are we confident enough to move on to a new concept and skill? Or can I move on and build in some review as we go forward? So the question is, which student's change would be represented from the point farthest from zero? So when we think about the word farthest does not mean biggest. It means the farthest from zero, which means we want to think about absolute value. The farthest point is referring to distance. And so when we think about that, Andre is 3.76 away from zero. He's to the right of zero. Brenna is 5.4 to the right of zero. So she's further to the right than Andre is. But Christopher, even though Christopher had a drop in score, he had the greatest change because he's the furthest from zero. So Christopher had the point farthest from zero, or the largest absolute value. All right, looking at question 6 on our Concept 7 assessment. Again, just a quick reminder while you're processing and reading this, that when we call things assessment, everything we do is an assessment of our learning. So don't be panicked, don't feel anxious because I call this as an assessment. This is just like anything else we would do in class. We're using it to help guide and gauge how is our learning going, so that we can reteach and rebuild and fix mistakes and move forward as stronger math learners. So whether we would normally, you might have in the past called it coursework or in-class work or homework or a quiz or a test, all of those things are types of assessments that we use to gauge how our learning is going. So as you hear me use that word assessment, that's not a scary word. The word assessment simply means we're assessing how our learning is going. So looking at number 6 on our Concept 7 assessment, write the number positioned at point B. So again, first we need to count and figure out that denominator. The denominator in this case is out of 4 because I go 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks. So I've got 4 tick marks to get up from 3 to 4. And so I know my whole number is 3. And then I'm at 2/4. Now, a lot of folks probably put 3 2/4 in. And if you put 3 2/4, you did interpret this number line correctly. Give yourself a pat on the back for that. But if the question still said that you were wrong, it's because we could simplify this a little bit further. 2/4 is the same as 1/2. Okay, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. And so then, of course, if we wanted to enter that into our answer box, we would use our fraction symbol there and put in 3 1/2 into our symbols. All right, I think I have time for one more before my time runs out on this recording. And this is a good one to look at. Let me clear that old ink so it's not distracting to us. So the numbers below are listed in order from greatest to least. Which answer could be a value for n? So from greatest to least, we're thinking in reverse. We're going on our number line. We have a number line. Oops, my number line's not very straight there. Sorry about that, guys. I have 0.3 is positive, and then I have 0, and then I have -1/8. So I need something that's going to fall in between 0 and -1/8. In order to do that, we would need to figure out what answers here could fall between -1/8. And my tip on this problem is you have 2 options to help you compare and find what number falls in between here. The first option would be to find common denominators between all of these fractions. But when you look at these fractions, there is a wide range of what that common denominator could be, and you're going to be working in some pretty big numbers in those denominators. The other option is to turn each of these numbers into a decimal point, because we know that 1/3 is -0.33 when we take 1 divided by 3. We know that -1/10 is -0.1. And so if we converted -1/8 into a decimal point, you can find that decimal point by taking 1 divided by 8 on your calculator, and then you can work in decimals because even decimals count as rational numbers. Whoops, now I'm in the math. All right, hopefully this helps as you prepare for your retake on the Concept 7 assessment, looking at fixing some of those little mistakes when we're looking at comparing numbers on the negative side of the number line, remembering that we go from left to right on the number line. The further to the right you are, the larger the number, even when we're on the negative side of 0. All right, I hope this helps. Good skill on your Concept 7 retake.